Hello. It's time for another commentary on the I Ching. We are now on number 22, hexagram 22, which is B, or Adornment. And this is a very interesting hexagram because it is a hexagram that seems somewhat simple, and it seems like it's somewhat on a simple topic, but then as you plumb into it further, it has a lot of greater depths. It is, the subject of it is the balance, you could say, of the inner and the outer, of your inner essence versus your outer expression. That is to say, how you are and how you show yourself to others. And that's a topic that has been discussed for, well, at least since the time of the I Ching. That's the earliest mention of it. But it means that it's been from the oldest times of human civilization a topic of interest, because we recognize that on the one hand there is a difference between, for most people, the way that they are in their own nature and a way that they express themselves to others. And furthermore, there are people who, for whatever reason, do not express their inner nature to other people in any way. Like they put on a fake mask, right? That's adornment. That's where you're making yourself look good. But on the other hand, there's also people who never put on adornment. And that's almost as big of a problem, right? Because if you're there's a certain lack of social ability in those contexts. If you don't know how to frame yourself, your being, to a situation, then you end up causing a big social problem for everybody, and that's an issue, right? Because a lot of what that external presentation is meant to do is to facilitate social interaction and social cues in ways that if we were all just always expressing our inner essence, would probably not be able to run as smoothly, right? So this is not a hexagram that's saying it's bad to present an outer presentation, or an outer adornment. It's not saying it's good. It's looking at it at the different contexts in the moment of space and time in which you get a hexagram like this, the different ways that it can be good or bad. That's the reality in every hexagram. All hexagrams of the I Ching look at all the different facets of a particular significant human theme. And adornment is a significant human theme. So the elements of B are the sun below and the earth element, or the mountain, above. The image that is presented with it says sunlight bathes the foot of the mountain. That is, it is beautiful, but it will not be seen for very long. So the adornment here is the light of the sun coming down onto the mountain, onto the foot of the mountain, which is the green part of the mountain, of course. And so it becomes radiant, filled with colors and light, but it's the sun is setting, right? And so when it sets, it gets past the horizon of the next peak, it's over, right? And so it's saying, first and foremost, that adornment is temporary and malleable, right? It can change, and what it does is it brings out in a different way the essence of what is always there. The forest is always there, right? The sunlight hits it, and it suddenly changes into something different, right? The colors are deeper or brighter, and there are things you would not have seen before without that adornment of the sunlight. and then it goes away again, and the forest is still there. So this is the difference between essence and adornment. The main description of the hexagram is adornment, success. It is right for those in position of weakness to have goals. So there's a couple of different ways of interpreting the story, let's say, of the hexagram of adornment. The first, because what you see in adornment is that the first 4 lines are in their proper places. The upper 2 are not. So at different times, you could interpret it in a couple of different ways. The first is that it's the story of those first 4 lines. And so this is basically the story of a commoner who wants to become a sophisticate, and is trying to understand how to be able to present themselves properly. The other one is that it's a story of the top 2 lines, right? It's of people in positions of high influence that find themselves obliged or feel themselves liberated to act in certain ways, in ways that are perhaps not obeying the proper adornment for that position. Okay, and so it can be either of those cases. But in the case of the main description, it would seem to suggest that it's talking about the first of the 2, right? That it is good for a person in a position of weakness to have goals, the goal being to better yourself, and by bettering yourself, it requires that you learn how to be able to continue to cultivate your growth and learning these ways of being able to interact in a more sophisticated way so that you can better yourself. Then you have the great work. It says the superior individual is open and elegant, but not too frivolous or too lenient in his judgments. So here it seems to be talking about the other guy, right? About the person at the top, right? Which says that here the position for the superior individual is to behave openly and elegantly, but without frivolity or leniency. So there's a difference between, when it comes to your outer presentation, between being able to make a good impression, being including expressive, right? And even you could say bohemian or eccentric or flamboyant or whatever, being you, right, in the way you want to express how you are, which is not, of course, how you are, but it's how you want to express how you are. Being you in that way, and then becoming frivolous, right? Becoming a parody of what you wanted to create as an impression. And that's a very fine line. The commentary of Confucius says, reaching only a certain, so here we're going back to the first example, the one of the commoner, right? Reaching only a certain growth and then stopping is the pattern of common man. So what he's saying there is that almost everybody has to learn and develop certain ways of understanding the right and proper way to behave, and the right and proper way to think, and the right and proper way to act, right? And the difference between a common man and a superior individual is that the common man does that only up to the limit of what his station requires him to do, right? So he'll learn all the things he needs to learn to be able to live, get a job, do the work of whatever his social level or his community level is, but not more than that, right? He'll do the minimum necessary. And Confucius says that what you have to do is go beyond that, and that's the mark of the superior individual. He goes on to say, refinement and ritual are the great advances of human civilization. So from Confucius's point of view, your ability to present yourself in a way, your adornment, is not just, we're not talking about like just fashion or makeup, right? Although those are actually part of adornment, obviously, right? We're talking about an understanding of how to create high-level symbolic influence in human society, right? Remember that to Confucius, when he talks about ritual, he's not meaning magic spells. From Confucius' point of view, anything you do in an orderly fashion and with an intention, with a prescribed way of doing it, is ritual. or rite. Not right as in correct, but right as in a rite of action, right? A rite of a ceremony, right? So when you're brushing your teeth, that's a ritual or a rite, because you've been shown how to do it the right way, and you do it this way, and that's how you do it, and you do it usually people do that that's one of the few things normal people do very ritualistically as a rule, right? Some of them very sloppily, some of them very good, but they're always going to do it the same way, right? And that refinement, that ritual allows you, through doing things that are not concrete, because if you grab a stone and you throw that at somebody else's head, that's a concrete way of creating change, right? Not a very good way. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's a way of doing it. Whereas if you understand how to use concepts and symbols in the way you present yourself, in the way you act, in your rights, that is something that doesn't have a direct connection, right? Like point A, point B, the rock flies to the air to hit the head, right? But if you know how to create a look for yourself, or shift that look at different moments, change, you could say, your aura, your way of impacting other people. If you know how to look at people in the right way for the right situation, if you know how to talk to people, if you know how to follow the rules of art, right, and all of those sorts of things, then this allows for the creation of abstraction level change that there's no material reason for it to happen, but it happens because you're essentially doing a magic spell, right? Not in the sense of performing some kind of ceremony with a pentagram or something like that, but instead what you're using is you're arranging symbols and concepts in a way around you that are effective at creating change in your environment. And that's a part of what adornment does, right? And I mean, that's why makeup happens, right? That's why fashion happens, but it's also, and why advertising happens, right? Those are all, everybody who works in those areas understands this already. They just don't think it's magical, but, magic is largely about the manipulation of symbols, and that's what they're doing, So Confucius says, by contemplating the nature of reality, studying human capacity, and seeing the pattern of time unfolding, we can change ourselves, the environment, and the world. So at its most basic level, this hexagram is just talking about, how you should act in front of the vicar, versus how you should act in front of a longshoreman or something like that. But at the highest level, Confucius looks at this and he says, no, this is about everything about your ability, your ability to understand yourself, the environment, and the world. And how you present yourself is how you act on that understanding, right? And your ability to change how you present yourself to suit a situation demonstrates your level of understanding of reality. If you don't have a good understanding of reality, you won't be able to do this. And he's right. So, getting to the lines. The bottom line, line 1, having properly adorned his feet, he can leave the carriage and walk for himself on solid ground. He does not have to rely on others to move. So this is the very bottom line. The bottom line, typically the bottom line refers to the peasants, right? And yet in this one, it's talking about a noble, because it's talking about a carriage. So here it is, perhaps a young noble, because it's at line 1, who is trying to rely on themselves instead of relying on others. And here what kind of I think the message is that what he's doing is he's changing one adornment for another, right? Instead of covering himself in adornment, which is the carriage is an adornment, right? It was a sign of his status and everything else, right? He's instead putting on boots, right? He's adorning his feet, which is another kind of adornment, because that one accentuates him rather than it conceals him, right? You're in the carriage, nobody can see you. They can see the grandeur of your carriage going by, right? And instead here, if you start to walk, you are seen, and the adornment is just a way of showing, of highlighting your inherent ability. And a person who's walking obviously is going to be more visible and not having to rely on others, right? So the message there is essentially that your adornment should be in the form that doesn't make you helpless, right? That instead puts you in the forefront rather than covering you, you know. Number 2, adorn the beard of your superior. So this is, adorn the beard means in this context that you should make the person above you, the person, your superior, whoever's in charge, whatever the context is, make this other person look good, right? So dedicate yourself to assisting them in their adornment. And that this presumably will end up having a beneficial effect. Number 3, his adornments shine. Following the right will to the very end brings luck and mutual benefit for his supporters. So line 3 is the end line of the sun trigram, right? And it is a highly positive line. And it is suggesting that, you see, you could almost see that there's possibly a kind of a process in these 3 first lines, right? In the first line, you have the person stepping out for themselves. In the second part, you have the person supporting the person above them. In the third one, you are the person above. And as long as you're following your right will to the very end, you will have luck, and it will bring down mutual benefit to those who are below you, right? Line 4 is a very unusual looking, very esoteric kind of line. It says, adorned in white on a white horse, the suitor is looked upon with suspicious. Some think he's a bandit. But if he goes forward, in spite of the doubt of others or even his own, he will be satisfied in the end. So this is a story, basically, that's telling about a guy who's dressed up in white, which is the costume for a suitor or a groom. And he's trying to find a wife. But white was also a color that was associated with banditry. So people, when they see him coming, they're not sure what he is, and that's a bit of a problem, right? Because you don't want to be confused for a robber when you're just there trying to be a Romeo, right, or something like that. It sounds like a romantic comedy almost, right? An 11th century BC romantic comedy. The message in this is that you have to be, I think, careful about how you present yourself doesn't create a confusing effect, that it isn't something that isn't just causing people to doubt you rather than to assist you in what you're trying to achieve, right? This guy ended up accidentally causing people to doubt him, and then you've got the rom-com going on. But it does say if he goes forward, in spite of the doubts of others and even his own, he's not quite sure what he is either, apparently, he'll eventually be satisfied in the end. You get a Hollywood ending at the end of that. Line 5, he, the master, humbly tends to and adorns his modest garden. All he can offer his virtuous subordinate is a poor and simple belt as a gift. Those below him may decide not to respond to his offer of work, disappointing. But if those above him take notice, there will be luck and happiness in the end. So line 5 is usually the ruling line of a hexagram. But in this case, the ruling lines are actually 2 and 6. And line 5 is in a very weak position. It's a yin line where there should be a yang. So line 5 was typically that position of the king, and yet here what you see is a king who has no power. Right? The king is stuck in his garden, and all he can do is offer people discipline. The belt, the poor and simple belt that he offers as a gift, the only thing he can do is teach people how to be disciplined, how to be patient, how to be consistent, how to do work. And a lot of people probably won't want that. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody to richly reward them. However, there is the possibility that by essentially when it says if those above him take notice, it can refer to someone literally above this person who's supposed to be in a position of power but is not really, and for that to change around. But it can also suggest really that it's not the person above, but it's rather that those above him is the power of heaven, right? That by showing, in this case, you are forced to make your outer adornment be one of humility. He's humbly tending to, and discipline, the taking care of his garden, offering his subordinates nothing but a simple belt. So you are obliged to show your mettle, as it were, right? And if you do that, then you have a chance that you will be able to get happiness in the end, because people will recognize your virtue, you know. And finally, you get to line 6. It says, in an exalted position, he can adorn himself plainly. That's up at the very top there, right? He can adorn himself plainly with nothing to prove, no error. So number 6 is often the line that is above everything in the context of the casting. And in this case, what it's saying is, if you're somebody who's at the highest level, then it probably doesn't matter how you act, because you can do whatever you want, right? So you don't have to show off. You don't have to put in an impression. Of course, you also could show off. You could behave outrageously and probably get away with it, right? And that is the context of being in the 6th line. You're no longer at a place. You're in a position where how you externally present yourself is not going to matter. Right? It's not going to matter, because you're beyond all that at this point, for one reason or another, either because it's far too late to change anything, or because you have succeeded beyond your wildest dreams, and now everybody has to suck up to you, or whatever it is, right? For whatever reason, you're outside the area where outer adornment matters. So that's everything for this video, but of course, for those of you who are in the Yi Fa Society, I will be following up with a further video that'll add a little bit more esoteric commentary to the deal with this hexagram. If you're interested in that, and if you're watching this video and it's the first video of mine you've seen, please check out the rest of the videos on this playlist, the Yi Fa Society playlist that has all of the I Ching hexagrams, and subscribe, and feel free to share this anywhere you want. And if you're interested in a more profound study of mysticism in this tradition of the Yi Fa Society, please feel free to get in touch with me. Also, you'll see a link in the description of this video to a mailing list where we don't mail you anything. But if you're interested, this series is from The Magician's I Ching. You can see my very well-worn copy here. The Magician's I Ching is my book on the I Ching and its occult and esoteric elements. The companion to this, you could say, is called The Path and the Power, and it's a commentary. It's a reinterpretation and commentary of the Tao Te Ching, and you can get the PDF of that for free if you sign up for the mailing list. Again, you won't be mailed anything. The mailing list is inactive, right? But it's just a way for you to get the book if you want it, right? So you sign up, and in the response, you'll get a reaction, a single email saying welcome to the list or something like that, and you will find the link there to The Path and the Power. And if you're interested, again, in profounder, more structured teaching on the path of cultivation in this tradition descended from the I Ching, get in touch with me about joining the Yi Fa Society. Find me on Facebook, for example. That's everything. Thank you very much.